Shushloka mole gunavadam ahu. Shrutesha vidvadbir upakritayam. Kata sudayam upasamprayogam. Eka anta, the one who has no comparison. Labam, gain. Vachasa, by discussions. Nupumsam, after the Supreme Person. Sushloka, pious. Mole, activities. Gunavadam, glorification. Ahu, it is so said. Shrute, of the ear. Cha, also. Vidvadbi, by the learned. Upakritayam, being so edited. Kata sudayam, in the nectar of such a transcendental message. Upasamprayogam, serves the real purpose, being near to. Translation. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. Purport. The impersonalists are very much afraid of hearing the activities of the Lord because they think that the happiness derived from the transcendental situation of Brahman is the ultimate goal of life. They think that anyone's activity, even that of the personality of Godhead, is mundane. But the idea of happiness indicated in this verse is different because it relates to the activities of the Supreme Personality who has transcendental qualities. The word gunavadam is significant because the qualities of the Lord and his activities and pastimes are the subject matter for the discussions of devotees. A rishi like Maitreya is certainly not interested in discussing anything pertaining to mundane qualities. Yet he says that the highest perfectional stage of transcendental realization is to discuss the Lord's activities. Srila Jiva Goswami, therefore, concludes that topics regarding the transcendental activities of the Lord are far beyond the transcendental realization of Kaivalya happiness. These transcendental activities of the Lord are so arranged in writing by the great sages that simply by hearing of those narrations, one becomes perfectly self-realized, and the proper use of the ear and tongue is also achieved. Srimad Bhagavatam is one of such great literatures, and the highest perfectional state of life is attained simply by hearing and reciting its contents. Translation again. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the greatly learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. Om Gana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The end of this chapter is highlighting the theme that the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are inconceivable. You've heard about the universal form and its role in creation. That certainly is inconceivable. Materialists accuse theists that whenever there's something you can't understand about the universe, out trots God. As many of you know, they call this God of the gaps. Whenever there's a gap in knowledge, you believers trot out of the stable God. And why do you do this? It's a primitive leftover from ancestral human beings of crude times. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, when human beings were simply hunters and gatherers. And therefore, in order to survive, they had to be very sensitive to things rustling in the bushes that they couldn't see immediately. And this conferred this constant awareness of unseen things rustling in the bushes or swinging in the trees high above the primitive humans. This consciousness, this paranoia, conferred an evolutionary advantage. And gradually this sensitivity to things happening due to causes beyond our vision, that descended into today, into human beings today. And therefore, you are what is known as a hypersensitive agency detection device. You've made the jump from hearing a rustling in the bushes and thinking, oh no, it could be a tiger, it could be a snake. You've made a jump now in your advanced human state. You've made it a jump to thinking, there's God. So there are different types of atheists that you can be if you want your choice. Number one, the most desirable among atheists is the analytical atheist, one who supposedly studies the cosmos, studies the world situation, and through that analysis of so-called logic and reason concludes there's no God. Then there is what's called the organic atheist. Someone who just kind of naturally comes to that conclusion without any pressure. And kind of atheism that's not wanted by the atheist is the coerced atheist. Someone who's like grown up in nations that make religion illegal and whose official party doctrine is atheism. That most atheists look down upon that coerced atheism. No, it should be organic. It should be analytical. And then, what are most people today? They're in the slot, in the category called apatheism. That's a combination of apathy and theism. Like, what do you think about God? Huh? Never think about it. What was the score of the footy yesterday? In other words, an apatheist is someone who just has no thought of whether there's God or not, or what's that got to do with my Saturday night? Yeah, someone may believe, they may not believe. I don't know, I don't care. Like if I'm speaking about this in the USA, I say, to an apatheist, you mention Jesus. Who's that, a Latin American baseball player? Because so many Latin American baseball players, they say, Jesus. Jesus Hernandez or something like that. So this is what's generally going on in Australia, I see. Apatheism. God, how's the surf today? So the God of the gaps is applied because why is it that just because you can't understand something, you have to bring in God? Of course, we can turn the argument on its head. Matter of the gaps. When you can't understand something, what do? You empower matter. Matter can become life. Matter can produce consciousness. You've never seen it. You say it happened in the past. Prabhupada would always point this out. You say it happened in the past. Why isn't it happening now? Why just the past? Oh, that's a complicated answer. So this is matter of the gaps. You empower inert matter with inconceivable potencies. So where is the experience of that? Where are the great personalities who attest to that? The advantage of Srimad Bhagavatam is you have access to the realizations and wisdom of the greatest personalities in the universe and beyond. Unless you have access to authorized knowledge, you can't make any advancement as a human being, as a human society. So this is the unique gift of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, giving access to the most authorized knowledge. And if you apply that knowledge, you'll get the results. The results are described. Someone who's an impersonalist, and that's another variation. They, as Prabhupada writes, the impersonalists are very much afraid of hearing the activities of the Lord because they think that the happiness derived from the transcendental situation of Brahman is the ultimate goal of life. They think anyone's activity, even that of the personality of Godhead, is mundane. And of course, for the bhaktas, we thrive on hearing and discussing descriptions of the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna. How can that disturb your quest for ultimate happiness? That is the ultimate happiness. Even regarding Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Mayavadi sannyasis of Varanasi, they couldn't understand. What are you doing? This chanting, this dancing, this singing of the holy names? You are a sannyasi. You're supposed to be stretching your brain to study what is Brahman. Why are you, Prakashananda Saraswati asked, why are you hanging out with sentimentalists? The same occurrence happened with Haridas Thakura. He's wandering around in Govardhan during the time of, this is right before the time Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and he's going from one Vaishnava assembly to another. And this time, he's at the home of the Majumdars, and they had invited him, please Haridas, come out of your hut, come out of your solitude. We're having a Vaishnava Katha gathering. So he arrived, and everyone offered their humble obeisances, knowing this is the arrival of Haridas Thakur. They began to glorify him. Chaitanya Charitamrita says they began to glorify him like each one had 5 mouths. Oh, if we could only glorify Vaishnavas like that. 1 mouth is not enough. If I only had 5 mouths, still that wouldn't be sufficient to chant the glories of the Vaishnavas. And they were exclaiming about Haridas Thakur chanting 300,000 names a day. So then, in discussing the glories of the holy name, and this is important because just as Krishna is inconceivable, so is his name. That name that we're supposed to be chanting every day with attention, that has inconceivable Shakti, Nam Namakari Bahuda, Nija Sarva Shakti. It's full, it's complete. The name is Krishna. So the devotees gathered at this house were discussing the glories of the holy name. And they were, in their discussion of Nam Tattva, the science of the name, they were presenting various possibilities. The topmost glory of chanting Hare Krishna is that it extinguishes all your sinful reactions. Another one would say, the topmost glory of chanting Hare Krishna is that it gives you mukti, it gives you liberation. So they were going back and forth like that, and then Haridas Thakur intervened. He said, neither of these two are the real glories of the holy name. If you want freedom from sinful reactions, you get that just by namabhas, a glimpse of pure, offenseless chanting. If you want liberation, again, you get that as a byproduct of your approach to pure chanting. So he explained, Haridas Thakura explained, that just as before the sun shows itself in the morning sky, the first rays from the sun cause transformations. The first glimmer of dawn causes things to happen. Thieves run away, ghosts disappear, demons want to hide. Similarly, with the first rays of the holy name, pure chanting. Not yet the stage of Shuddhanam, pure chanting, but just a glimpse of that stage. Namabhas gives you freedom from sinful reactions and liberation. Haridas Thakura clarified, the real gift of chanting Hare Krishna, however, is prema. When you get to the stage of pure chanting, Shuddhanam, you receive ecstatic love for Krishna. And Haridas explained that actually devotees, they're not interested in byproducts like liberation. They're interested in devotional service to Krishna. And if you have devotional service to Krishna, you have the spiritual world. He pointed out, liberation will knock on your door. Let me in, let me in. Prabhupada would explain, the Mukti lady is knocking on your door of the Vaishnava. And the Vaishnava says, sorry, I'm just too busy in devotional service. I can't open the door. I don't have time. These are the glories of the holy name. So there was one impersonalist there, young, handsome, learned, beautiful looking. He just interrupted. Wait a minute. Let's just wait a minute here. Are you trying to tell me that simply by chanting Hare Krishna and getting a glimpse of pure chanting, you get liberation? What nonsense. The greatest rishis, the greatest sages spend millions of births trying for liberation by studying with their mental speculation, their jnana, by studying Brahman, and sometimes they get liberation and sometimes they don't. And you're trying to tell us that simply by chanting Hare Krishna, you get liberation, the supreme destination, the ultimate? And Haridas Thakura said, yes, that is a fact. Just by the first glimmer of pure, offenseless chanting, you're free from material existence. The impersonalist, Gopal Chakravarti, just couldn't digest this. It's revolting to him. Krishna's activities, Krishna's qualities, they are the highest manifestation of Maya. They're good for temporary meditational value until you realize that everything is Brahman. And then you kick away props like Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes. This is what the impersonalists think. So this young man became so arrogant that he said to Haridas Thakura, if it is not true what you're saying, that just by namabhas, a shadow stage of pure chanting, you get liberation. If that's not true, I'll cut off your nose. Everyone in the audience was, oh my God, what an offense. But Haridas Thakura took up the challenge. He said, if it's not true, I'll cut off my own nose. So there was a huge uproar in the assembly. The participants in the assembly, the Katha session, realized we are witnesses to a great offense. So there was a tumult, and the masters of the house, these wealthy householders, they actually had employed this impersonalist Brahmana as a tax collector for them, bringing in revenue. And so they dismissed him immediately. You're fired. don't come into this house again. And so Gopal Chakravarti, of course, left, and all the devotees fell at the feet of Haridas Thakura. Please forgive us. And of course, Haridas Thakura told them, it's not your fault, and it's also not even the fault of this ignorant Brahmana. He's a mental speculator. How can a wannabe Jnani understand the glories of the holy name? It's not possible. So Haridas told them, don't feel bad for me. Just go home. May Krishna bless you. You know what happened. Many of you know what happened next. Gopal Chakravarti, the impersonalist Brahmana offender, was afflicted with leprosy. You would think when Haridas Thakura got the news, he was jubilant. Aha, just see. Revenge. No, he was unhappy. So he's always on the move. So he went from the house of the Majumdars to Shantipur, where his mate, Advaita Acharya, resided. And Advaita Acharya gave him a cave by the Ganga, and there they would gather together, the two of them, and discuss Krishna Katha, showing us, devotees, that this is how we associate, discussing talks about Krishna, talking about Krishna's service. That is the real way for Sangha. That's the real way for Vaishnava fellowship. Advaita Acharya explained to Haridas Thakura very deep and profound meanings of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. You might say, well, how can you get deep explanations about Bhagavad Gita? Well, appeal to Advaita Acharya. They both discuss the fallen condition of the world. And so Chaitanya Charitamrita says that Mahaprabhu appeared because of these two. Advaita Acharya, considering the fallen condition of the world, worshiped the Lord with Ganga Jal, water from the Ganga, and Tulsi leaves, and also because of the prayers of Haridas Thakura. So this is the power of Vaishnava Sangha. The more that we come together for hearing and talking about Krishna and Krishna's service, the more the potency of the Krishna consciousness movement manifests. Everything about Krishna is inconceivable. We don't have to feel apologetic about that. What can people understand about their own material existence? They're living encased in such ignorance. I was hearing from some oceanographers, scientists who study the ocean, and they said that we know less about the depths of the ocean on the Earth planet than we know about the moon. What's right around us, the ocean, the depths of it, we don't have the knowledge about it that we think we have. We don't know what's going on there. And people are all focused on the moon and thinking we understand that. Whether we do or not is another thing, but we know less about the oceans that cover the surface of the earth. So Lord Brahma says in the 10th canto in his prayers, you can go on trying to list the glories of the Lord. You'll never get to the end, just like you can't count all the atoms in the universe. You can't count all the particles of this, particles of that. You'll never get to the end. Similarly, you'll never get to the end of the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the same about the name. That name that we take so casually when we chant Hare Krishna, when we pick up our beads. We're so casual and unfortunately inattentive about what has limitless, infinite glories. Part of the tonic for offensive chanting is to hear about the glories of the holy name. Because we have a tendency to take it for granted. little bit infected by impersonalism. Not a raging fever, but still there's a cough there. There's some sniffles. Can Krishna really be present as his name? We say that as soon as we meet a non-devotee, you should chant Hare Krishna. But when it comes to us, I'm a bit busy today. So the more we hear about the glories of the holy name, the more our attraction for chanting develops. So again, at the end of this chapter, we're hearing that the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are inconceivable, and when there's a recitation of those glories going on, our real purpose in life is served just by being near that discussion, what to speak of being amidst that discussion. So let us remember Haridas Thakur's definitive pronouncement, quoting Shastra, just by the dim glimmer, the first appearance of pure chanting, you're liberated, you're free from sinful reactions, but the real purpose of chanting Hare Krishna is the development of ecstatic love of Krishna. All right, any questions? Obviously, Haridas Thakur was expert at minimizing all other activities. He's empowered to chant Hare Krishna. That's part of the empowerment. You can sort out your day in such a way. Of course, at the same time, we're told not to imitate Haridas Thakur. That doesn't mean anyone who's seriously trying to chant Hare Krishna is, you're imitating Haridas Thakur, just forget it. Prabhupada himself gave the example that you're chanting extra, more than the minimum, and then someone comes up to you and says, such and such service is necessary. No, Haridas Thakur simply chanted. Let me continue with my chanting. You can't do that. A mature Vaishnava knows when to do what. In the very mature stage of devotional service, yes, you just want to chant. You wonder, why 16 rounds? Why not 16 million rounds? So it's a point that requires some spiritual maturity. Haridas Thakur was an empowered personality. He and Advaita Acharya together could bring down Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, bring down the Lord's appearance. So he's empowered, but he's showing you the full potential of chanting Hare Krishna. If we can just get a drop of that ocean of full potential, how successful our life will be. So naturally, if you're making advancement in your spiritual life, you're going to feel like, why do I have to stop at 16? Why can't I just keep chanting? When that starts to happen, then you know your spiritual appetite is coming to the fore.
Sometimes indiscretions serve that devotee. So it appeared that Haridas Thakura wasn't happy when Gopal Chakravarti Thakur contracted the leprosy, but it seems that Krishna is the one that gives the reaction, because even though the devotee forgives and doesn't take it personally.
Yes, you see that in the case of Prahlad Maharaj. I can't understand it with my tiny self, but Prabhupada said that Prahlad, when being tortured by his father Hiranyakashipu, took it that his father was just playing with him. If you know all the different ways that Hiranyakashipu tried to kill Prahlad, Prahlad is so innocent and so focused on Krishna's glories that he thought, oh, my dad's giving me attention, my dad's playing with me. But Lord Nrsingadev appeared. Even though Prahlad didn't take offense, the Supreme Personality of Godhead did. And similarly, Chaitanya Charitamrita says that's the case with Gopal Chakravarti. Haridas Thakura didn't take it as an insult. And he told the audience, don't get upset. What does this ignorant Brahmana know about the glories of the holy name? He's a speculator, Jnana Yogi. What does he know about the intimate glories of the holy name and how it gives you love of Krishna? Don't expect this from him. That was Haridas Thakura's reaction. All right, I must take leave of you all now. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, glory to Srila Prabhupada.